All right, in this video, 10.5, speciation. What does that word sound like? Sounds like species. Probably 'cause we're going to be talking about species. What is a species? That's a good question. Oh, looky here. What is a species? A species is a group of similar organisms that reproduce to create fertile offspring. Two things important there. Similar, meaning that they're obviously similar, right? Well, those two crows are similar, carrion crows and hooded crows. Well, when they reproduce, they don't make fertile offspring. They make these hybrids, right? That are crows, but they're not able to sustain. And so hooded crows and carrion crows are two separate species because when they get together, they don't make fertile offspring. And so hooded crows stay with hooded crows, carrion crows stay with carrion crows. These two organisms are two separate species. Long ago, they speciated. It's a real word. It's called speciation. Speciation is the creation of a new species. It can happen in one of two ways. There's allopatric speciation. Allopatric speciation is where there's some sort of geographical isolation. See in this picture. So you start with the one species of trees at the beginning, right? And then a mountain grows up because that's what mountains do. They grow really slowly, but they grow. And then over time, those two sides of the mountain stop talking to each other. Guess what? Two species of trees, right? Just they change over time so much so that they're unable to reproduce with one another. Sympatric speciation is where that same thing happens, but there's some sort of other reproductive isolation that occurs, and it causes them to stop reproducing with one another, right? We're going to talk about some different reproductive isolations that can occur. Geographic allopatric is really simple. Sympatric means same place, right? So reproductions or speciations happening when they're in the same place. Allopatric, different place, where they're geographically isolated. What are these reproductive barriers? Well, there's two groups of them. They're prezygotic barriers and postzygotic. Look at the word. Zygotic, what does it sound like? Zygote. Remember, zygote's the product of fertilization. Sperm plus egg equals diploid zygote. There's the zygote in the middle. And so a prezygotic barrier is preventing fertilization, right? It's preventing the production of a zygote. A postzygotic barrier, the zygote has been made, the mouse in this case has been born, but something is preventing that mouse from being a species, right? Something is like these hybrid crows. They're infertile. So we're going to talk about that, right? Obviously there was a zygote, right? Obviously there was a zygote here, but there's some sort of post-zygotic barrier that's preventing them to become their own species. Let's look at those. Here are those prezygotic and postzygotic barriers. There are three prezygotic barriers that we're going to discuss in this class. The first one is called temporal isolation or temporal barrier. We'll just use isolation because that's what biology uses. Temporal isolation is when two species mate at different times of the year, or notice they have frogs here, great example, or it could be different times of the day too, nocturnal versus diurnal animals. And so they are isolated because they are not reproducing at the same time. Temporal means time. And so, yeah, habitat isolation occurs when two species having different habitats. Lions and tigers, great example. They're not mating anymore because they live in different places completely, but used to, they did, right? And so they live in completely different habitats. Lions are more grasslands, tigers are more jungle lands-ish, jungle-ish, lands-ish. And then they don't see each other, right? And so different habitats. Behavioral isolation, two species have different courtship behaviors. Birds are where you're going to see in this a lot, but it could be anything. It could be frogs for that matter that call one another in, right? Different calls. So those are behaviors. Their behaviors are isolating one another. So the first three, they're not actually mating. There's no zygote being formed because one of those three things are isolating those two groups and keeping them separate species. The postzygotic barrier in this case is called hybrid infertility. It's where the hybrid fails to produce functional gametes. The hybrid is essentially sterile. The crows above are an example. A mix between a lion and a tiger is a mythical beast known as the liger. The liger is a sterile animal, even though it is mythical and magic and all the things. And then, of course, mules, which are decidedly unmagical, but they're great worker animals, I guess. Mules are not bad. Don't hate on mules. They're not ligers, obviously, but they're just not, they're sterile. They can't have children, and so you don't have mules mating to make more mules. A mule is a mix between a horse and a donkey, and horses and donkeys are two separate species because they cannot make fertile offspring, right? There's a postzygotic barrier. Is natural selection random? It's not. Is the, and I chose this picture, this picture is dramatic, but is the outcome of this particular contest random? It's not, right? It's a baby gazelle. There's a lion. And lions do what they do, gazelles do what they do, and this is not a random occurrence, right? Now, could something random happen in order to create a different outcome here, right? Yeah, sure. A rhino could be running through and completely truck this lion and free this gazelle. That would be random, right? But typically, survival of the fittest, right? The 4 principles of natural selection are going to be true, and that's not random at all, right? But there are random things that can happen to populations that change them. Let's look at them. There's going to be 3 of them, and one of them has 2 things. Gene flow is the first one. This is where, well, it tells you right there. It's a great thing. Thanks, Buzzle.com. Gene flow is the exchange of genes between 2 populations. Notice the population on the left is all homozygous recessive, all homozygous dominant on the right. Homozygous recessive bird on the left says, I'm done with y'all, I'm going over here. And that's going to change that population, right? It's going to insert those recessive genes into the population. It's going to change the makeup of that population. This is random, right? The bird's not saying, I'm going to go mix things up by taking my recessive alleles over here. It's not purposeful, right? It's just leaving, it's migrating, gene flow. Mutations are random, right? They can cause all changes driven by mutation. We learned that in 10.3. So mutation is important. We're not going to talk about any more there. It's changing the DNA. And genetic drift. Genetic drift, specific definition here, random changes in small populations. Got your population on the left there, 3 green bugs, 3 brown bugs. All is well in the world, and random happens. T-Rex socks comes by and steps on 2 of the green bugs. Right? There's no amount of natural selection that's going to protect those 2 green bugs from what happened to them. Is the population changed afterwards? Dramatically, right? Dramatically. And so let's look at a couple of examples of genetic drift. Bottleneck effect is one of them. This is where a small section of the population is all that's left of a larger population, right? It's like trying to pour beads out of a bottle. Only a handful of beads are going to come out. The rest of them are going to get caught in the bottleneck. What could cause this? Usually a natural disaster, right? Something like that's going to cause this massive change to a population, cause it to change over time, and there you go. It's going to completely and dramatically change the makeup of that population because random, right? The forest has 10,000 deer in it. That forest burns down. 72 deer are left. It's random. There's nothing about deer that prepare them for fire, right? And so that's going to completely change the makeup of that population over time. And another example of genetic drift is called founder effect. Pretty similar, but founder effect has to do when the small bit of a population moves away to another group. You can think about this with humans, especially over time. You see lots of instances of this happening with humans over the course of civilization. But just look at this picture of butterflies. A butterfly population that has what? Let's see, 5, 6, and everything's kind of normal, right? 5, 6, 6 looks like, and everything seems pretty even, and then orange and 2 browns decide to move away. And, right, completely change. That new population is going to look completely different than the base population because they took a very small sampling of that population and moved away. We call this founder effect, and this is an example of genetic drift.